the trans lobby should be careful what it wishes for because it just might get it. So there's been an interesting and quite now long struggle between intersectionality and what I'll call just gender essentialist feminism that's been going on in the UK. And the gender essentialist position is the position that most people hold because it seems to just be a common sense position, as in a woman is an adult human female, a man is an adult human male, and so there is a biological component based on what you are that connects you to a gender role. And that seems to be the case almost everywhere in the world. Until the intersectionals came along and said, no, this is all just a social construct. And what about the very, the less than 0.1% of people who fall outside of that gender construct? I mean, we need to change the whole system to accommodate them. And it's like, well, maybe they could just figure a way of fitting in, right? And so this goes back a fair way. I mean, like, this is an example here from 2018 where the High Court refused gender-neutral passports because Nosferatu was asking for them. She says, I assume it's she, I don't know what
Voldemort.
No, I don't know what the pronoun is, but Christy Ellen Kane, who's fought on the issue since 1995, as if that's the most important thing. Really, you've got nothing more important to do than I need a gender-neutral passport. Okay.
Wow.
The answer is no.
You must not have much going on in your day-to-day.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that just speaks to a remarkable level of privilege, doesn't it?
Oh,
if
yeah.
that's the thing that you're most concerned about, then okay, I'm most concerned about way more pressing needs. But as John again points out, reminder, there has never been gender on passports. It's your sex that's on your passport. So that's, again, biologically determined. But anyway, she said that she was bitterly disappointed that non-gendered people are socially invisible and being denied civil rights. What civil rights? I was not seeking special treatment. I was seeking to be treated as a human being. Okay, then pick male or female. And she's previously said that basic human right to have your identity. It's like, maybe, but do I have to do so much work in your identity?
Yep, the Leo argument.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. It's exactly right. Anyway, so this kind of fits into a wider pattern of the Conservatives actually defaulting to conservatism in the face of gender identity attacks. And that's like, wow, the Conservatives are actually doing things that are conservative.
I suppose they've drawn one line in the sand.
It's not even that they're drawing a line in the sand. It's that I think they just don't understand the argument.
They just don't get it.
I think it's honestly, they just don't get it. Under Theresa May, the government had apparently planned to allow transgender people to just change their birth certificates without medical diagnosis. And so this was just based on self-identity, and Boris Johnson's government scrapped that, thank goodness. And instead, again, this is back in June 2020, they planned to announce a ban on gay cure therapies and conversion therapies, and as the Times describes it, to placate LGBT people. And this was done on a consultation that they got more than 100,000 responses to, but insiders say about 70% of those that backed the idea said that anyone should be able to declare whether they're a woman or a man. So this makes officials believe the results were skewed by an avalanche of responses generated by trans rights groups.
It's definitely giving me that impression.
Yeah, me too. But anyway, I mean, moving on, leftists have been screaming, oh, we need to ban conversion therapy. And I was just like, what? Like, what percentage of the population does that affect?
And in the past, I have actively tried to look into this and found it very, very difficult to find a single person who could give me a story of having gone through this. I mean,
I can tell you why, actually, in a minute, if you want.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we'll just go through this quickly. So this human rights lawyers, of course, are demanding the government bring forward legislation to end conversion therapy in the UK. So this proves that Robert Conquest is still the most relevant historian in the West regarding lefty human rights lawyers. But legal professionals, campaigners, and experts have called upon the government to take decisive action. Oh, really? You want the government to do decisive action, do you? Are you sure that's wise? You sure you've got a turf government? You want decisive action? Is that smart? I'm not sure it is. Baroness Helena Kennedy, QC, chair of the International Bar Association's Human Rights Institute, proposes it be made clear in law that would-be perpetrators that vile practices will not be tolerated in a civilized society. Blah, 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 blah. What are you talking about? There's no mandate that anyone has to go through any of this, but they say, these degrading and inhumane practices are an affront to the rights of gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and intersex people and must be criminalized in all their forms. It's like, so even if you want to go through whatever conversion therapy entails, and we'll look at that in a second, they want to make it so you're not allowed. So, okay. Why?
Yeah, I don't know why people would want to go through the therapy, but as
No.
far as I can tell, it's entirely
Elective.
you opt into it.
Yes. And so the government did an assessment on it, and this was interesting. So if we can go to the next one, the evidence suggests that the modern forms of conversion therapy are commonly based on a belief that same-sex orientations and transgender identities. Again, interesting here how conversion therapy mixes sexual orientation and transgender identity, as in LGBT.
I mean, this is why we've broken off with the LGB alliance.
Exactly. So they're again mashing together two things that are not the same. But they do this because of developmental disorders, addictions, or spiritual problems. The most common methods they identified was a combination of spiritual methods, for example, prayer, healing, or exorcisms, or pastoral counseling psychological methods, for example, taking therapies. The boundaries between the two approaches are often unclear, which may allow them to be described as pseudoscientific. Conversion therapy appears to be most commonly carried out in religious settings by individuals or organizations, but may also be done by mental health professionals or family members. In some cases, secular mental health professionals may treat minority gender identities or minority sexual orientations as symptoms of existing mental health conditions. It is unclear how often this is a deliberate attempt at conversion therapy. So, is this actually something that happens?
So is this what they claim to be conversion therapy? I come out.
I think so.
So I just go to the doctor, like a psychologist, and say, "Well, I think I might be asexual," and they go, "Well, it might be something other than that."
Yeah, and that might be considered to be conversion therapy.
No wonder I couldn't get in touch with anybody.
There doesn't seem to be a hard and fast definition.
Yeah,
and so I mean maybe. But the problem though is that it's a kind of local community issue that may be found among the more religious local communities of Britain. So this might be an Islamophobic attack on the Muslim community of Britain.
Wow. I mean, to be fair, actually, thinking back on it when I was looking into this subject, it did seem to be most of the allegations were coming from, were aimed at more religious institutions. Yep. Which were still undergoing it in terms of like exorcism and stuff like that. But even among them, it was an incredibly small fraction of a percentage.
But that's not to say that there can't be any coercion involved, which it is possible. It's a local religious community. There could be quite a lot of coercive pressure put on them.
Potentially.
For threats of ostracism and things like that. But anyway, they carry on. Common reasons given for seeking out conversion therapy are a perceived incompatibility between someone's religious values and their sexual orientation or gender identity. People of LUT feeling personally attacked, a desire to belong and feel normal within a community, external pressure or coercion by a family member or the faith community, and some people report that while they underwent conversion therapy voluntarily, they feel these choices were shaped by powerful influences in their social environment and under guidance from authority figures. So seeking out, though, meaning not directly imposed by the state, but again, it could be that the communities they live in are pressuring them into it, and that's maybe not fair.
Potentially.
And so how many people are going through this? How big a problem is conversion therapy in the United Kingdom? Not very. A national LGBT survey of 2017 found that out of 108,000 respondents to the survey, 2% of them had attempted to be cured of the LGBT, of being LGBT through conversion therapy. So 2% of, say, the gay community.
So that's probably what? I mean,
the gay community is like 1% of the country.
Yeah, like 108,000 respondents. So that's what? A little over 2,000 people?
Yeah.
Maybe. And that's on something that seems to be very nebulously defined.
Yeah. And a further 5% had been offered it. So 7% had even gone anywhere near this.
Oh.
So 93% of the gay community reports no. Don't have to worry about it. And again, it's not mandatory. But transgender respondents were more likely to have been reported having undergone or been offered conversion therapy at 13%, rather than the cisgender respondents at 7%. Again, that's both.
I'm wondering which way that went. For the transgender respondents, which way were they trying to convert?
And apparently one recent study found that compared with sexual minority adults with no experience of sexual orientation change efforts, people who had undergone conversion therapy were twice as likely to have had suicidal thoughts, 75% increase in odds in attempting suicide and things like that. So it makes them basically feel worse about themselves. So I'm not saying that it's good.
There's no surprise, really, especially if it's coming from a religious framework.
Exactly. And an inflexible religious framework, as they all are. And so the Conservatives are moving to ban conversion therapy, which fine. I don't, like, it's just a total non-issue. Like, I don't care. It hardly affects anyone. Go Conservatives. They're going to bring this legislation in to protect people from the coercive and abhorrent practice of conversion therapy. And Liz Truss, the Minister for Women and Equality, says, as a global leader on LGBT rights, this government is always committed to stamping out the practice of conversion therapy. It's always been committed to it, isn't it? So in the 70s, they were like, oh yeah, we've got to stop that conversion therapy. But the damn Labour Party won't let us. Okay, but whatever. It doesn't seem to be a very, very big problem. But the way that they're bringing it about is going to be a big problem. So if we go to the next one, big problem for the LGBT community. Because part of the legislation they're bringing in is to criminalize anyone who urges people to change their gender.
They're not very happy about that, are they?
No, they're not.
This isn't what we meant.
This is not what we meant.
This is not what we meant.
This is not what we meant at all, is it? Mermaids. From next spring, it will be illegal to convince someone to change their sexuality or gender identity, with extra safeguards to protect adolescents. You can hear the Tavistock just sweating. Government sources suggested that organisations like Mermaids, a charity that offers advice and counselling to children with gender dysphoria, could be outlawed. Trans rights groups said the proposals will have a chilling effect on free speech. Oh, now they care about free speech, do they? Oh, do they? I don't believe a word of it. But, okay, so Mermaids potentially banned.
Based.
Under the proposals, medical professionals will escape sanctions. However, informal advice sought from family and friends will also not be criminalised. However, all other counselling offered to children under 18 will be outlawed, and adults will have to consent to take part in therapy. Laws will be introduced after a consultation. So, although the decision to ban this is controversial, the LGBT campaigners have long been calling for the ban on conversion therapy. It's like, yeah, but that goes both ways. That's the problem that you're going to have here, isn't it? Because you wanted it to go all one way in the direction of more people being converted to LGBT and no change at all, right?
Yeah, I mean, what was it? Stephen Crowder's done a number of looks into it in America and places like that, where they will just have big get-togethers of groups of people who will just say, oh, you can transition as young as 8. Why not 5? Just keep it younger. And in Scotland, what was it? They were allowing people as young as 3 to determine their own gender identity.
Yeah, and also, if you're going to talk about the coercive nature of a, say, religious community, it's equally applicable to say, well, there's a kind of coercive nature to the transgender community to push it in the direction of being pro-trans, which is normal. You'd expect that from the trans community. But then from a religious community, you'd expect them to be anti-gay or anti-trans.
Well, because it's that their religious beliefs.
Exactly, because these two groups have conflicting beliefs. And so the government's like, no, you're not going to do either of those things. And there was significant screeching from the left. We can go to the next one. Mike Freer, a Conservative Equalities Minister, has had to come out and say, no, look, we're not actually banning mermaids, because the allegation that we're going to ban mermaids is from an insider. But you can see that they're feeling very personally attacked at this point.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder why, right? So he says that's incorrect. Our proposals will set out that any person who tries to change the sexual orientation or gender identity of someone under 18 will be at risk of prosecution, but that does not mean that organisations that seek to provide advice would be outlawed. So calm down, leftists. Nobody's coming for your transgender surgeries. We just want common sense transgender surgery control, okay? Mermaids addressed the article, tweeting, for anyone worrying about a certain article for today, we have had reassurance from the government officials that the government policy is not designed specifically to target our work, nor any organisations that supports trans people, but clearly this doesn't stop people from attacking us. But the thing is, why do you feel personally attacked by this? You're not allowed to try and encourage children to change their gender. And Mermaid's like, well, hang on a second. Well,
this is our human rights.
Exactly. Is that what you're doing? You know, they won't say that they're doing this. They, of course, say, no, of course we don't do that. You know, but there are lots of anecdotal tales floating around the internet that suggest that people involved with this are activists who have been trying to encourage children to transition. And so this is what they're concerned about. And as Pink News, hosted on Yahoo, but this is a Pink News article, says, from repeatedly referencing attempts to convert people to being transgender to allowing loopholes for religious conversion therapy and consenting adults, the proposed legislation is not what the LGBT community was hoping for.
I'm sure it wasn't.
Oh, good. This again, is not something new. There's the case of Kira Bell, who's currently going through the courts on her problem, her lawsuit about how she was given puberty blockers at the age of 16. And if you can go to the next one, John, she was referred to the Tavistock Gender Identity Disorder Clinic at 16 and had 3 one-hour-long appointments before she was prescribed puberty blockers, which of course delay the onset size of puberty. And in her opinion, she says, I should have been challenged on the proposals or the claims I was making myself. And I think that would have made a very big difference as well, if I was just challenged on the things that I was saying. So at no point in the process, and it took 3 hours, 3 one-hour consultations for her to get puberty blockers at 16.
I mean, as far as I'm aware as well, the majority of diagnoses when it comes to these kinds of conditions like gender dysphoria and other such things primarily come down to self-reporting.
Yes.
Which is an incredibly difficult thing to say measure the accuracy of, because especially if at the age of 16, how well do you know yourself at 16 years old? Exactly.
And that's the thing. Like Kira's point is like, look, basically I'd gone on the internet, like been persuaded through the media I'd consumed that in fact I was this. I wasn't challenged at any point. And she had both of her breasts removed. And
That's
so now
pretty irreversible at that point.
Exactly. As a teenage girl getting both of her breasts removed because of things she's read on the internet. Like you can see here, like she described being a tomboy as a child, and tomboys are fine. They're not men, by the way, trans activists. When asked how strongly she felt the need to change her identity, gender identity, she replied, "It gradually." Get back up, John. I was reading that. John, there. She found out more about transitioning online, so she'd essentially kind of radicalized herself into this position. And so the question is, well, why are mermaids so bothered about this? Well, I found this on Mumsnet, and I found this very interesting. Where Mermaids had tweeted out a thing about having to keep your Google searches private from your parents. That's weird, isn't it? Why would a charity be trying to come between the flow of information between a child and the parent? Well, that seems suspicious.
This sounds like trying to hide your history results from your kids, from your parents as a teenager.
Yeah,
you're never looking at good stuff in those scenarios.
Yeah, and this person posted the trans children charity Mermaids has created a button on its desktop website so that children can immediately jump to another website if a parent comes into the room, presumably while either looking at Mermaids material or talking to someone else in the charity, so they can lie to their parents about that they were actually doing something else. It's like, not what I think a charity should be doing.
No, that seems... I've never seen a charity be so outwardly deceptive.
Yeah, it seems a bit sinister, doesn't it? And then it's like, well, you can't encourage children to transition. They're like, oh, how dare you, this is oppression. It's like, okay, well, I'm starting to wonder about mermaids, that's all I'm saying. But anyway, this isn't the end of the conservative commitment to gender identity, I guess we'll call it, to biological gender identity. Because the next one, Priti Patel has stepped in and said, well, hang on a second. Why are you recording trans women as being biological women in the police reports? Because it's skewing the police reports. And so basically she's come out and said trans criminals are not women, which is, fair from my conservative perspective, but from an intersectional perspective, this is screech-worthy.
From a classically liberal perspective, perfectly fine as well. If it's adhering to reality,
yes.
At the end of the day.
Absolutely. But the reason that she wants this is because it's distorting crime statistics, right? There's a really interesting point that's made. In UK law, only men can commit rape. So rape is defined as penetrative by a penis. And so only a man can commit a rape in UK law. However, between 2012 and 2018, 436 people prosecuted for rape were women.
So that's spiked up, I imagine.
Yeah, weird that, isn't it? So this is very interesting. And they give the example in the Mail about a case of one Zoe Watts, who was jailed for a string of offences, including building an improvised bomb, and she was born male but identified as a woman. And so they recorded the crimes as being committed by a woman. So it seems that, women's crime rate starts slowly ticking up. The number of rapes women commit goes from 0 to 436. It's just like,
Women are acting an awful lot like men recently, aren't they?
Well, remember, just to top this off, the unofficial Prime Minister is completely opposed to all of these things. So I don't know how the sub-Prime Minister is getting through. If we can go to the next one. Remember that Carrie Johnson thinks that Trans women are women.
I was wondering who you meant by unofficial prime minister for a moment there. Should have guessed.
Yep. And the chair of the LGBT plus conservative group, Elena Bunbury, said that this is bringing into question trans rights. Trans people are not dangerous. They're not scary, and they're certainly not a threat to women and children. Although at the other event titles this at the Conservative Conference, they might think they are. Conservatives, get rid of this group. They're leftist subverters. LGBT is a leftist intersectional acronym that comes from the heart of Kimberly Crenshaw, a critical race theorist. If you don't agree with critical race theory, you don't agree with LGBT as an acronym. That needs to go.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full thing at 1 p.m. every weekday at lotuseaters.com, or you can sign up to get access to all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, we've got loads of really good stuff. Every week we have a Contemplations and Epochs episode that goes up, and in the Contemplations we talk about just interesting things, and the Epochs episodes are probably my favourite because I love talking about history. This latest one is we're doing a bit of a series on the 100 Years' War and why England kept winning. And we've not finished it yet, and you're going to really enjoy the end of that one. But we've also got other excellent episodes that we do, like the book club. The most recent one was Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. This was about his time in Burma as a colonial officer, and when he was tasked with the shooting of a rampaging elephant. And it's really, really interesting what the circumstance of the thing was. But we also have lots of other content, such as premium articles, which have audio tracks on them for our silver and gold subscribers. And we do premium podcasts about things that we don't really feel that we can put on YouTube or have done a particularly large amount of research into. And so it's worth keeping them slightly more private. And we also do lots of very interesting interviews, such as this one with comedian Steve Hughes, which was really fascinating because I didn't expect him to be a philosopher. But anyway.
Yeah. Also, the last thing to mention is the live event content we have. So we occasionally, when we get around to it, doing our live events, and the videos from them are on the website as premium, of course, because people came to see and paid. So go and check that out. This is on the worst of critical race theory.
Yes.
And I do mean the worst.
It's unconscionable.
Yeah. So if you'd like access to all that premium content, go to lotuseaters.com and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.